What's up, YouTube? So, in this video, sorry, it wasn't responding for a second. It kind of scared me. But in this video, I'm going to be doing a Friday the 13th tier list because, why not? Um, you see the list. I got the movies in order. Let's just go ahead and get into it. The first Friday the 13th. I don't think I can put it below B just because it's the start of the franchise. It's a classic. Do I think it's A tier though? I'm gonna be judging this based on just my enjoyments of the films. I'll put it in B tier. I think. It was a good movie, and it started the franchise. But on its own, I don't think it's as good as some of the others. The twist, so-called twist at the end, really doesn't work. It's really not a twist. The only reason that we didn't think that the killer was Pamela Voorhees is because she just didn't exist until the end of the movie. So, the kills were really good. The gore effects were really good, especially for their time. And like I said, it definitely start. Actually, I think I am going to put this in A tier. Actually, just because the gore effects really did remind me of it. Even though it was the first film, the gore effects were some of the best of the franchise. But yeah. Great film. Started like I can't put it in S tier. I think there's only going to be one of them in S tier for me. So, Friday the 13th Part 2. This was the first film where Jason was the killer. He didn't have the hockey mask yet. He was still with the burlap sack. The ending is terrible. Let's get that right. Spoilers, by the way, if you haven't seen any of these movies, but you should know that if we're getting into a Friday the 13th tier list, because I got to talk about my reasonings for putting things where they're at. But basically, we don't know what the fuck happened. He kind of came through a window after the final two victims, a man and a woman, and then it just cut to black. Then we see the girl getting taken away in an ambulance, and the guy is just gone. Jason's just gone. So, as a film, I'll put it in C tier. It's not terrible, but like I said, that ending really does really does drag it down for me. Part 3 isn't my favorite. This is the first film where he does get the iconic hockey mask. But in my opinion, this movie was shot to be in 3D, and I think the writers, they hindered on that a little bit too much. Like they just tried to focus on what would be really cool 3D effects rather than actually trying to make a good story. And I think the movie kind of paid for it a little bit. I'll put it in C tier, though, next to the second one, because that ending for the second one drags it down pretty bad, too, for me. And I see some of these later films, and they're definitely worse than Part 3. So, yeah. Part 4, that's going in S tier. This is my favorite of the Friday the 13th franchise. This is the film that introduces Tommy. Just a really, really good film. And, yeah, I think Jason was at his scariest. I think, for one, this was like the only film where I actually cared about some of the victims. I really didn't care about any of them prior. And it is pretty much just Tommy because everyone else kind of feels useless in the film. But, yeah, great movie. Part 5, New Beginning. This one, it's not Jason. Again, if you haven't seen the movie, sorry. But it's not Jason. It's a copycat killer. It's the actually the ambulance driver. I actually really liked the film. I can't remember some of the characters' names, but I can't remember their names. The black kid and his older brother. I'll just say that because I can't remember their names. I really liked them. They were really cool characters. We get a return of Tommy. He's in basically a psych ward, and he just can't deal with his trauma from the prior movies. I'll put this in A tier. I love this film. Actually, I don't think I could put it up there with the first one. I'll put it in B tier, but I do definitely like it better than 2 and 3. I know this movie gets a lot of hate because it was a copycat killer and all that, but as a film on its own, it's a great movie. And seeing Tommy struggle with his PTSD like he does, like it made for some really cool shots. So yeah, Part 6, Jason Lives. I'll put that in A. Again, this is the last film with Tommy. He basically is even more fucked up. They kind of ignore the events of Part 5, mainly because of fan outrage of the film. Part 5 ended with it looking like Tommy was going to be the next killer, which would have been a very interesting concept, but they didn't end up going that route. They wanted to bring back Jason. Kind of similar to after Halloween 3, they demanded the return of Michael Myers. But, yeah, it was just a great film. Tommy pretty much hunting down Jason Voorhees, dealing with the sheriff in town that just didn't want to listen to him, just wanted to ignore him as a lunatic, basically. Just really good film overall. Part 7. Now, a little bit of insight into this film. I didn't know this when I first watched it, and I was very confused. There's a lady here that has like telekinetic powers, like she can blow shit up with her mind, lift things with her mind, and stuff like that. And I was completely lost because I did not know the backstory of this film, what it was supposed to be. This is when they were starting to try to want to do crossovers with Jason, and this film was originally supposed to be Jason versus Carrie. But they couldn't get the rights to Carrie, so they kind of just made someone like Carrie, a female with Carrie's powers. But I didn't know that the first time I watched it. I just didn't understand why this chick randomly had telekinesis all of a sudden. As a film, I'll put it in C tier though, just because, like I said, I'm looking at some of these others and they are definitely worse than this film. So yeah. Not a fan of the telekinesis, though. I forgot to mention, too, that Tommy, at the end of Part 6, kind of ties a chain around Jason's neck and pretty much puts him at the bottom of the lake. The film pretty much opens up with telekinesis girl, not Carrie, lifting up the rock so he can live, so she can get revenge on him and shit. So, yeah. So, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. This is a film where they had a lot of potential. Putting Jason in a different situation, and it is a little bit deceiving because it implied that he'd be in Manhattan, and he did go there, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't there for much of the movie. He was mostly on a ship. Which made for some interesting kills, because, there's definitely limitations to being on a ship if you're trying to be a slasher villain. Put it in D. I can't put it in F tier. I think there's only be one film in F tier. It does have the scene where he punches someone's head off, so that's pretty cool. Also, the ending to this film is still bizarre to me. Like, they pour toxic waste on Jason Voorhees and he ends up like melting back to being a child. I don't understand. Apparently it was supposed to disintegrate him, but they needed to leave him as a possibility of coming back for Jason Goes to Hell, so they made him a child, which is even more confusing. especially with someone who can regenerate like Jason. You could have just said he has like Wolverine levels of regeneration, and he just comes back. That's all you had to do. But yeah. Anyway, Jason Goes to Hell is F tier. This is, in my opinion, the worst film in the franchise by a mile. You do have the return of the original writer, which is cool. The one that wrote the very first Friday the 13th. The problem is, he didn't watch a single one of the films that came before it, between 1 and 9. And he didn't like Jason being the killer. And it shows. It completely ignores the rest of the franchise. It brings in some very weird things, like part 8, like I said, it made it where he turned into a child so that he could still be alive for Jason Goes to Hell, but they don't even acknowledge Jason Takes Manhattan, so whatever. Yeah, just not a great film. I mean, it does have a hilarious scene, but it's a scene that's not supposed to be hilarious. And I still don't understand it. I guess it was calling to him, but basically in the beginning of the film, the police and pretty much the military, they show up with tanks and shit and just blow Jason the fuck up. They just blow him into a million pieces. And they get him to the morgue, right? And the coroner is examining Jason's body, and he gets to the heart. And it is the most hilarious scene. I don't know why the look on that man's face was so funny, but it was. He was just holding the heart, and he just had the weirdest expression on his face, and then he just like Daenerys from Game of Thrones when she was eating that horse's heart, just takes a big old bite into that juicy black rotted steak. Oh man, yeah, the movie sucked though. Movie really sucked, and not even was it just a bad Friday the 13th, but it kept breaking its own rules in the film as well. And yeah, no. Jason X, I'll put that in D tier. Again, this is a film that had some pretty good potential. Putting Jason on a spaceship, again, kind of similar to the ship I was talking about in Part 8, brings some interesting dynamics, but the kills pretty much sucked. Most of it was off screen. You could tell that this was like made to be able to go onto TV. And yeah, it's just not really a great film. The writing is pretty bad. Like the timeline really isn't good. The sci-fi elements pretty much suck. Some of the CGI is pretty rough. But it's not as bad as Jason Goes to Hell. So points there, I guess. Freddy vs. Jason, I know this movie gets a lot of hate, but I actually like it. I'll put it in B tier. Is it a great film? Absolutely not. But I find it very enjoyable. Just seeing them on screen together is a lot of fun. They had to jump through a lot of hoops to get them to fight, which makes sense. You know, one of them is in reality and the other is in a dream world. And Jason's dead, so he probably doesn't dream. They kind of had to make him dream, which is still weird to me. And they kind of had to retcon a lot of the things that happened in the prior films to make this make sense. And also, they did Jason Goes to Hell so that they could set up for Freddy vs. Jason, and they put Jason X ahead of Freddy vs. Jason so that they could still make this make sense timeline-wise. But they don't even acknowledge each other, so yeah, whatever. They may as well just not made them canon in a canon timeline. But still a good film. The remake now, I'll put that in D tier. I'll put it in C. It's not as bad as these two. This is just an okay film. I know the remake gets a lot of hate. It's not great. Don't get it twisted, but it's an okay film. That's really all I have to say about it. But yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty much going to be it for this video. If you liked it, I'd appreciate you hitting that like button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.